Hi all, the Chess Bowl Championship between Anand and Kramnik is coming up. I think it's a nice time to reflect on past World Championships and past World Champions. One of the most nostalgic photos I've ever seen is Nottingham 1936. Outside the venue here, there are 5 World Champions in this picture. Do you know them? Can you spot them? I'll tell you. Mikhail Botvinnik, father of the Soviet chess school, he was a trainer to both Kasparov, Karpov and later Kramnik. In the front row seated, we have here Lasker, one of the longest ever world champions. He was able to play quality chess, in his 70s even. Capablanca, the finest natural talent the world has ever seen. Max Euwe, who took the title off Alekhine, sat next to him. So these are all the world champions in this picture. Mikhail Botvinnik, Lasker, Emmanuel Lasker, Jose Ruel Capablanca, Max Euwe, Alexander Alekhine. When was the first World Championship, you may ask? It was held in 1886 between Steinitz and Zukertort. Let's have a look at the first ever World Championship game. Played in 1886 between Steinitz and Zukertort. These were the 2 strongest players in the world at the time. Zukertort was white in the first game and kicked off with d4. Steinitz played the Slav defence, believe it or not, which is popular even today. In fact, one of the most popular defences at Grandmaster level nowadays, to the move 1d4. So after e3, this is a slightly passive move from Zukertort, blocking in his queen's bishop. Steinitz played bishop f5. So he's not worried about any b7 weakness at the moment, with white playing potentially queen b3 at some point, which often, if the knight's on c3, hits both d5 and b7 simultaneously. But after knight c3, Steinitz just played e6. After knight f3, now knight d7 was played. And it seems with white's next move, a3, that this plan perhaps was overestimated in this era of chess, of gaining space on the queen side with later c5 and b4. Because later theory started showing very good practical results with black, being able to equalise with a central counter-attack based on e5. And this game is one of the first demonstrations of this kind of counter-attack. So after bishop d6, Steinitz is already still putting pressure on that e5 square and tempting white to play the threat c5, which seems to fall in line with white's queenside expansion plan. But Steinitz simply retreats to c7, and after b4, now immediately counterattacks in the centre with e5. And black is at least equal or even slightly better already after this move. After bishop e2, now knight gf6, and after bishop b2, black decided to play e4. It gains a bit more space, but the only slight problem potentially is white maybe castling queenside and later trying to undermine this pawn chain, which is a bit like in the French defence, as if white's playing a reverse French defence. But Steinitz had everything under control and played a very strong prophylactic positional move, h5, already clamping down on any potential white intention to play a later g4. And after h3, he now played knight f8. And this kind of theme with h5 and this knight manoeuvre is almost like a Fischer game, where he used to play the King's Indian attack systems with his knight manoeuvring around once he'd established a central pawn, advanced central pawn. So black is really capitalising on the space advantage here with this knight manoeuvre. And after knight h4, white is getting in a little bit of trouble already, and played g3, not estimating that black in this position would continue with a fine piece sacrifice, gaining very strong attacking opportunities now. After knight g2 check, king f1, Steinitz played knight takes e3, so not concerned about sacking a knight for 2 pawns. We know about that recently from my recent club game. So the white king is slightly exposed here, But the other problem is black has a big space advantage, a very aggressive pawn formation, and is able also to manoeuvre the rook like this to join in the attack. So it seems, white is a bit restricted, and these pieces can't easily come to the defence of the white king. So we saw this continuation, queen g1 now, and after rook h6, it starts to look a bit bleak for white now, with the pressure mounting up. So queen d7, attacking h3, and it's very difficult to defend that. So black actually lets it go, but first he takes on c6 and then rook g1, letting the h3 pawn go. And now knight g4, so this actually gains the white squared bishop. So that loses white control of key white squares now, like f3. So after takes on g4, takes knight e2, now queen e7. So queen e7, potentially now there's ideas of queen g5, f5, rook f6. There's all sorts of menacing threats. After knight f4, actually rook h6 was played. And now, after bishop c3, black, Steinitz, seems to be aware of pawn chains and undermining. He plays g5, gaining space, but now, after rook f6, queen g2, he plays rook f3, getting into that weakened light square. White dare not take it, otherwise his queen and knight would be fault. So knight f1, and now we see rook b8. So black's even dominating the b line, ready to come down with his rook. So white's completely overloaded here, and is a bit helpless. And Steinitz actually carries out now the undermining plan f5, f4. So this does seem like advanced positional play is being demonstrated. And white's pawn chain, if e3 drops, d4 will be weaker. And if d4 is weaker, the whole chain is going to be exposed. But black is after white's king here, so increases the pressure on the f file, takes on e3, and now rook f2. Things are starting to be really bad now. So what can white do here? So white played now, after rook f2, queen takes f2, giving up his queen for nebulous compensations. After knight takes g4, black doesn't have to play hg, but that's also strong. He played the even stronger move, perhaps, or just as strong, bishop f4 check first, and now taking on hg4. And the rook is protected, of course, by the bishop, so there's no rook h8, that's harmless. So white might as well have resigned here. But he played on for a few more moves. After king d7, the rook is prepared now to come into the attack if necessary. And the king's just centralising here with these checks, these last few checks. After bishop takes e3, it's all pretty hopeless. Just bishop f4 now was played, not falling for queen takes f1, knight g3. And that concluded the first ever World Championship game. White resigned here. Let's have a look in overview and summary. So it was a Slav defence, and Steinitz seemed to play with modern positional concepts. First equalising in the centre, and now establishing a nice advanced central pawn. So his pawn chain is very aggressive, clamping down on white's g4, and now manoeuvring the knight, like Fischer would in a kind of reversed King's Indian attack type positions. The knight sacrifice is very good, exploiting the space advantage very well, being able to increase the pressure and resources, bearing down on white's king side, winning the h3 pawn. There's enough compensation now, and white just starts to crumble now. He can't keep control of this position with these pawns coming down and black coming into the f3 square. So the pressure just still further increased with this f5, f4 plan. So white's pawn chain was under fire. And now, after this rook f2, white decided to give up the queen. There's nothing much better. Say queen g1. Now queen f3 would be crushing, so e2 can't be defended. So white gave up the queen, and after that, basically, it was plain sailing for black. Black just marched the king after these checks, and after this last rook f1, just played bishop f4. So a very fine win, demonstrating quite a few positional concepts, which seem to be ahead of Steinitz's time. I hope you enjoyed that. Please leave any comments on YouTube. Thanks very much.